Hey everyone, I wanted to attempt to make a short video about working collaboratively in GameMaker. I don't know if I'll accomplish that or not, but let's try. So if you've spent any time hanging around any GameMaker forums or GameMaker Discord servers or subreddits, you've probably heard at one point or another that GameMaker is not a lot of fun with collaborative working through Git. Git is a protocol that allows you to do source control for your project, aka backing up your files consistently and being able to jump back and forth through different versions. And a lot of folks use it for collaboration, which is a good way to use it. GameMaker has an implementation of Git built in that you can access through the File and Preferences menu, and then you go down to Plugins, and you'll see Source Control right here. And essentially this implementation is garbage. And there are a lot of reasons why. This would be really good for if you're just working alone and you want to make sure that you have a backup of your projects. Then the built-in Git source control plugin is all good to go, and you don't really have to think about much more. However, when you start working collaboratively with somebody else or multiple someone else's, by far the best tool to use is something called GitHub Desktop. So you've probably heard about GitHub before. GitHub is essentially a centralized way to deal with Git repositories. So repositories are where you store all of your code and all of your files, and they back up and monitor all changes to those files. But GitHub is essentially a centralized and large-scale hosting provider for Git repositories on the internet. There are a few other websites that provide the same services, but this will just give us a really intuitive way to interact with our repository and interact with committing changes to our code, and all sorts of other operations that we'll need to do as we work collaboratively with somebody else. So go ahead and download GitHub Desktop, and then run the installer. So once you run the installer and install GitHub Desktop, you'll be greeted with this Let's Get Started screen. On the right-hand side, you'll see the repositories that I'm a member of that I contribute to, either from myself or from somebody else. And these are just repositories that I've linked to my account before. Before we go any further into this screen and getting our repository set up, I'm going to set up a quick example program in GameMaker that we can use to talk about interacting with GameMaker projects. So we have our really dumb example project here. It just draws a little overlay on our test sprite, depending on if the object is on or off in the variable that we gave it. What a game, ladies and gents. All right, so I have that saved as Git project. I actually have it right here on my desktop. We're assuming that we're the one with the files that we need to share collaboratively. If somebody else has the base project already set up on their machine, then this is the beginning stage of what they would deal with. So we're just going to click Create a New Repository on our hard drive. And we'll just call it Git GameMaker Example. And we'll create the folder right on our desktop so it's easy for everyone to see here. Select that. We're just going to ignore all of this for now. If this is a project that you're going to want to make public, you might just want to hit this button. It doesn't really matter if you don't. This just creates a readme.md, I believe, which is essentially just a text file that gets displayed at the bottom of your public repository page. You could use this for instructions or just general information about the project. Some people make theirs look really cool. There's a lot of markup that you can use on GitHub, but we're going to leave it unchecked and we're just going to hit Create Repository. So now you can see over on the desktop that we have this folder. It's called Git GameMaker Example, and we have Git attributes in here, and we have a hidden folder in here that doesn't really matter. But cool, we have that folder. So this is essentially our Git repository on our machine. But we want to make sure that it's accessible to the people that we're working with, and that it's truly backed up. So we'll exit this for now, and you'll see that once I've created that repository in GitHub Desktop, it's brought me to this screen, which is essentially your control panel for everything that you're doing in your repository. And you'll see this button with some helpful information. You also see this up here. This is generally where you can get all of your work done from this button. And we're just going to hit Publish Repository. And this, with GitHub, allows you to change the name or the description of the project before you make the repository actually upload. This button, Keep This Code Private, is set by default. If you want to share code with the world, you would unclick this button. But everything for our example project looks all right here. So we're going to hit Publish Repository. You can see that it's doing some work up there that it just finished. And let's go check it out on my GitHub page. So you can see down here, this is in my browser, you can see down here that there's a updated 17 seconds ago Git GameMaker example, which is our repository that we just published. And if we go into it, there is nothing in there. So assuming that you have a GameMaker project already going that you're trying to bring into GitHub, it's fairly simple to get things started. So to get our files up there, we're just actually going to open this folder, and we're going to copy everything that's in it. So this is our GameMaker project, and we will put it right here. And what you'll see, this is something you'll become very familiar with very quickly. Everything that's changed in our local repository will be shown right here. So it'll, the file GitHub project was created, or Git project was created. We added all of these new things, and it shows us what all the values are inside of those files if we opened them up as a text file. So we'll just call this initial commit, and we're going to say commit to main. So now we've committed the project that we had to our main branch of our repository, but we need to upload it again. So that's what pushing is. So we have this button up here, and we have this button here, and we're just going to press it, and it will take those 27 files that it found, and it will put them on GitHub as a site. So you'll see that we have all of the things that we just pushed. We have the YYP file, we have the sprites, we have the room, we have the object. Now the thing that you should do now is we're just going to completely get rid of this project. We're going to select our project file, and we're just going to get rid of it. And for good measure here, delete it. Now we want to reload that project that we had, so we can go into our Git folder, and this is the folder that's being backed up against GitHub, and we'll open the file, and then we have all of our stuff back. So this is essentially where you'd want to be. You don't have to have your Git window open all of the time, but if you just wanted to use GitHub to back up your files and to make sure that you have different points in time in your development that you can jump back to if needed, this is really all you have to do. And you can see that if I go to the object, let's say here. So we'll add something here. We'll add, and watch what happens over here as soon as I click save. So GitHub Desktop has picked up that a file changed. So it says, we removed this right here, this squiggly. We removed this squiggly right here, and we added these 3 lines. So all I have to do now, usually I let this sit for maybe 30 minutes or so while I'm working on things, and then every 30 minutes I'll commit changes. But it gives it, for most things, it gives it a generic title. It says update draw 0.gml. We should be able to just hit commit to main. So it generated a summary for us. Usually, depending on what you're committing to, you would want a more descriptive title. And we'll just push that to origin. And once again, we can go back to GitHub Desktop, we can go back to GitHub, and if we refresh, we can see that something has changed. So update draw, and if we click here, we'll actually see that same change that we just approved. So what's great about that all is, it'll create consistent backups. You can jump to different versions if you like. So you can look at the state of the repository, you can download it, you can even do that in here, and then you can go back to it if you need to. And the functionality that I've just shown off essentially mimics what GameMaker is capable of with the built-in plugin. Now, when it comes to working collaboratively, things are a little bit different, and what becomes important is branches. So you can see up here that this says current branch main, and if I click on this button, it says that our default branch is main. You might also see that it says master. That's what GameMaker uses, and that's what a lot of other folks have been using for a long time. But much like parliamentary or congressional work, the actual work gets done in committees, which in this case is a branch. The big thing this allows us to avoid is issues that come up when you are all working in the same project file, changing things, deleting things, updating things. GameMaker doesn't have much of a good time trying to keep up with all of that, because unlike Google Drive, you can't just see other people editing code in here in real time. So if you and a friend are working on a game or a project together and you're both working in the main branch, you will have a very bad time. And that's essentially the experience that the built-in GameMaker Git plugin provides. However, GitHub Desktop allows us to subvert that. So let's say we have 2 people working on the same project. and we have that project in the main branch that we've been working in this case, this example project. And then we want to have, say I'm working on sprite assets and my partner is working on, some code in different objects or scripts. We each want to have our own branch. And ideally, when we're working in branches, we're working on specific functions at a time. So when you create a branch, it's very easy here. We're just going to create a new branch. And we see that we're coming off of main. So it's going to clone main into a new branch based on our name. So I'll just say my name's Brian. You could just do, netcode update or something like that. But in this case, we'll just call it Brian, create branch, and we'll publish the branch. So now you can see that I'm working out of the Brian branch, and there's a main branch as well. And I can actually flip-flop between these two, and it will download all of the files. So now we're working in our own branch, and we'll make some changes here. So I'm going to add in some new sprites. Just give it a sprite 2, and you don't have to have this open all the time, but just so you know it's there, it's in the background. So we can go on our merry way, testing things, on, off, cool. If we go back to GitHub Desktop, we'll see that those changes are here, and we can actually just commit them directly to our branch. So, add a new sprite. And again, because we have an update, we need to actually upload it, and we'll go push to origin. So now you've just pushed this to your own branch. It doesn't affect any other branches currently. And to demonstrate that, I'll create a new branch again. And let's make somebody up. So we're going to say Jimmy. Jimmy's coming in. You can also create a branch off of your branch, but we're just going to create another branch off of main. This is not something that you'll see too often, except for when you update from main. GameMaker will say, oh, the project files have changed. Do you want me to reload everything? And in this case, we do. So it'll reload, and we'll see that we don't have that sprite anymore, and also that it's still just drawing sprite 1. And that's because we're in the Jimmy branch that is based off of main rather than based off of Brian. So we'll publish the branch, and Jimmy's going to work on something else. So have it draw sprite 1, random, room width, even more obnoxious. So now when we run Jimmy's version, we see we have quite something going on. Nonetheless, fantastic. And commit, push to origin, get that all uploaded. And I just switched back to Brian, reload, and you'll see that Brian's version is still less obnoxious and also has that different sprite. So one important proper etiquette thing to know is that anything that goes into main or master should be working. There are definitely some exceptions to this if you potentially can make a mistake, and that's fine. Ideally, fix it as quickly as possible. And that kind of leads into what we're going to talk about next, which is making a pull request. So a pull request essentially, let's say that my feature in Brian, I am all done with it, everything is ready as requested, and I want to put it into the actual main branch or into a development branch that other people are working on. So I'm just going to hit this button that says create pull request. And it'll open my browser, and it'll say, I'm opening a new pull request, and it actually double checks for us. So it checks to see if the code and all of the files can be merged successfully, or if there's going to be something called conflicts. And I'm hoping to show you what happens and how to deal with conflicts before the end of the video. But we're just going to go and be a little bit descriptive about what we've changed. So I added a new sprite, changed some functionality, and then you can write a whole description in here about your update that you're making. And then you're just going to go create pull request. And because I'm an admin on here and I haven't changed any of the settings, Essentially, what usually would happen if you make a pull request to a public project, or let's say you're working in a team and you have somebody that's kind of your head developer, the pull request would be reviewed either just by that person or by a few people. You can set it up on GitHub so that a minimum number of people need to approve the pull request before it actually gets merged into the project. But in this case, everything looks good, and we are going to go ahead and merge the pull request. So what this will do is it'll take all of our changes that are in Brian versus what's currently in main, and put them successfully into the main branch. So we'll hit merge pull request. This is also something that you might want to add descriptors to, and press confirm merge. So you'll see now that this has been merged. If we go to code and we're looking in main, it'll say, the last action that was taken in main was that I merged a pull request from number 1, which is the pull request title. So I can go there and I can look at what the pull request was and everything that changed. And then it shows us from, what branch it came from. Now, if we go to Brian, it should say this branch is 1 commit behind main, which it does. And the only reason for that is that this branch hasn't logged that there was a pull request added in. You can just go to your branch. So I'm still in Brian. I'm going to fetch from origin. Whenever a pull request gets merged into main, or into master, or into whatever branch that you're working off of, click this button, or you can press Ctrl-Shift-U and update from main. And it will pull in all of the changes into your branch, hopefully with no issues. This is one of those things that will help in the long run, even if there are issues, because essentially if you're keeping up with the main branch and making sure that the feature that you're developing is keeping up with the main branch, it'll be a lot less challenging when you actually go to make that pull request once you're done with what you're working on. So we'll go to push to origin, and this will just let it know that we've updated from main. And if I go back to my browser and refresh, it says the branch is even with main. Cool. And still, if we go back to Jimmy and reload, we have Jimmy's original creation here. Poor Jimmy. So let's go to Jimmy's branch. And the branch is 2 commits ahead and 3 commits behind main. So the 2 commits ahead means that there are things in here that are not in main, and then there are things in main that are not in here for the 3 commits behind. In an ideal world, at this point, Jimmy would go update from main, and that would pull in all of the changes from main, and it should pop up actually a code editor right here, or in, you see this, open the repository in an external editor. So for me, it's Notepad++. It would show you the conflicts between Jimmy's branch and the main branch, and you'd be able to manually correct them. But in this case, to display the manual correction, we're going to do something that Jimmy shouldn't do. We're just going to say, Jimmy doesn't know what he's doing, and Jimmy is going to create a pull request and be like, my feature is so cool. So after he creates a pull request, you'll see instead of that green check mark that we had, he has this red X that says can't automatically merge. And then GitHub kind of, tries to make you feel okay. But we'll create this pull request. And you'll see that this pops up. It says this branch has conflicts that must be resolved. So this is trying to prevent you from overwriting things that would potentially break the project. So we'll click here and we'll say resolve conflicts. And it'll actually show you, so this section up here is what Jimmy has, and this section down here is what the main currently has. And so we're going to, what should we keep? We're going to keep Jimmy's cool background. Everything else that he wrote, was garbage this time around. And we'll get rid of these. And then you'll see this button up here becomes available. And it's, allows you to go mark as resolved. And you'll go commit merge. And then it brings us back to this pull request. And now it's confirming that everything looks good. Again, this is a less than ideal situation. You would want to deal with this on your machine or in your branch before making a pull request. But we'll go ahead and we'll merge the pull request for Jimmy. Cool, and that's been successfully merged. Again, we can go back to Jimmy, fetch origin, and if we go back here, it'll reload. you'll see that that correction that we made has changed already, even before updating from master. But we're going to do that anyway, or updating from main, excuse me. We'll push. Cool. So Jimmy is all set, all correct with everything that needs to happen. And if we go back to main, fetch origin, since we were just in Jimmy, it's the same thing, but we'll hit play and we'll see what happens. Cool. So there's our two very different features combined into one successfully. So there you go. That's pretty much it. Those are like the basics of using Git with your GameMaker project, and I did show you kind of one of the worst possibilities, which is just that you have to manually edit things. I guess in my mind, the most important thing to remember with GitHub is that you should always be following a process. But it's just important to remember, Brian works in Brian, Jimmy works in Jimmy, and then they come together into main through pull requests once that code is usable.